Darling, there's no skull there.
Hello and welcome to another bad movie review. This time we are looking at The Screaming Skull. This was from 1958 and runs about an hour and 8 minutes long. Directed by Nicol, who also plays one of the characters in the film. This was technically a vanity project by Nicol to try and get a new direction for his career because he wasn't getting the acting roles that he wanted, so he thought he'd try his hand at directing. The movie is based loosely on a story by Francis Marion Crawford, also called The Screaming Skull, which in turn was inspired by the so-called Screaming Skull of Bettiscombe Manor in Dorset, England. Now that doesn't really play out the same way as the legend from Dorset in this film. So what we have here is a young couple arriving at a manor house, but before that we get one of those weird openings where there's a narrator talking about how scary the movie is and how if you die, your burial expenses will be covered by the producers, which is really over the top, but it's so cheesy. That part really could have been cut out, and you probably would have effectively helped the movie more, because it not only sets a expectation of cheese, but it also gives kind of a air that you're going to see something super scary, and that's not what this movie is. It's not a jump scare movie. So we've got these two people coming to this manor house, and this is Eric and his wife Jenny. Now she is the second Mrs. Whitlock. The first one actually owned this estate and grew up here. Now the estate is obviously a family estate, and she grew up with the gardener's son, whose name is Mickey, who is now the gardener. And he's a little slow-witted, as they explain in the film. The house is empty, and we learned that the prior Mrs. Whitlock had removed all the furniture. She was planning on putting new furniture in to make the house their own, but unfortunately she died before that happened. It doesn't sound like they were married very long. Her name was Marion. She is occasionally referred to as Mary in the film, which at the time of the filming would have been an appropriate shortening of the name. It's not something commonly used today, and the name Marion isn't particularly common either for that matter. So Jenny seems a little creeped out. She looks a little jumpy, a little nervous, and we meet Mickey the gardener, who does live on the property, and he's been taking care of the place by himself for 2 years because Eric left and is now returning, and Mickey doesn't seem real happy about that. We are then introduced to Reverend Edward Snow and his wife, who's just called Mrs. Snow. They drop by with food, and Eric insists they stay, and they end up eating there. We do see Mickey, who's played by the director, talking to a painting of the dead woman. And I think that painting is really creepy. It's got some kind of uncanny valley lack of detailing to it that gives it kind of this unusual look, especially on black and white film. Now around this time, Eric mentions that Jenny's parents were drowned in an accident, and she witnessed the whole thing and was unable to do anything about it. And then we learned that Marion had died on a rainy day, apparently slipping and falling, smacking her head on a small barrier by the pond before falling in the pond and drowning. So Eric mentions this to Mrs. Snow, that he doesn't want Jenny learning too much about it because it might trigger some sort of episode. But the Reverend doesn't hear that, and he's blabbing all about it to her. So later on, after being startled by a nocturnal window noise banging around, there is a mud puddle in one of the upstairs rooms, and a lily pad is found. And it really creeps out Jenny, and Eric decides that he's going to ban Mickey from the house because he thinks it's Mickey that is just messing around being a weirdo. And of course, Mickey doesn't help his own case because he creepily talks to himself and Jenny. The next night, she's woken by a strange noise banging at her window, and she ends up back in that room where the painting is hanging, and she opens one of the closets, and there is a skull inside. Now, she throws the skull out the window, but that doesn't seem to really stop anything. We get all sorts of creepy noises and atmospheric sounds littered throughout her, like these peacock noises that sound vaguely like screeching, and that really does kind of add to the atmosphere of the film, because Jenny's hearing these noises, and and she's already on edge, and all this other stuff's going on. And she, of course, gets creeped out. At one point, she passes out, thinking there's a skull next to her. Eric decides to burn the painting, so they burn the painting, but in the ashes is a skull, and Eric doesn't seem to see it, and that makes Jenny pass out. Being only an hour long, there is a lot condensed in this movie, but it's really well done. The cinematography is really well done. There's some really creepy moments. The supernatural elements don't really happen until around the time of the burning of the painting, which is about 40 minutes into the movie. And that's when there's a ghost shows up. There's some creepy skulls. There is one notable goof in the movie where a skull goes rolling down the stairs and you can totally see the stick that pushes it. But overall, the special effects are pretty well done. They're largely practical effects, skeletons and skulls, but there is some superimposition where they have this ghost figure moving, and it's really well done, especially for the time. So I thought the camera work and the effects are done really well. The film does a really good job of keeping you guessing for the majority of the film as to what's going on. Is somebody trying to drive her crazy, or is she actually seeing supernatural events? And if somebody is trying to drive her crazy, who is it? There are a lot of motivations for the different characters here. Mickey doesn't like the fact that everybody's around. The ghost may want to get rid of the new wife. The husband may want the new wife's money. There's all sorts of different motivations. And with a very small cast, this movie is pretty well done. I was actually really impressed with what they were able to accomplish on what was clearly a very low budget and a very small cast. And with the movie taking place mostly at the manor house, they were able to control the budget very, very well and just restrict filming to the grounds and the greenhouse and the manor. And I think it worked really well. Even the fact that the building was empty creates a certain kind of atmosphere to it too. There's only a few pieces of furniture in there, and that was probably because the house may have been already empty, but it works for the film because it creates this kind of void feeling. So I thought the movie was actually shockingly good. It's a little dated as far as the way things are done with dialogue, but considering the fact that this was effectively a very B movie even for its time, I thought it was a really fun film. It's definitely got some good psychological thriller elements to it. Very little actual supernatural horror until pretty close to the end of the film, but even that worked out really well. So I was really impressed with this one, and I'm absolutely going to recommend it. I thought it was a really, really fun film. It's not going to appeal to everyone because the body count is only one. There's no plot points because it's a 1950s movie, but it definitely had that psychological burn to it. And yeah, it's got a few soap opera style elements. The music doesn't really help that too much, but it absolutely was a good story that kept you guessing for quite a while as to what was actually going on in the movie. So I'm going to recommend this. I know a lot of people have panned this movie over the years, including Mystery Science Theater, but as far as B movies go, this one was one of the better ones. It actually had a pretty solid plot and some really good elements. It's not particularly scary by today's standards, but for the time, I think it was actually destined to be a cult classic. And now you can find this one in a lot of DVD multi-packs and streaming services. I think it is in public domain in most regards, so it shouldn't be too hard to track down a copy of it, but it's definitely worth a view if you like thrillers, especially from the 50s. This has a lot of really good elements and some really good camera work. I just had a blast watching it, so strong recommendation all around. And that's going to do it for this episode. Thank you so much for listening and supporting the channel. If you enjoyed the video, please hit the like button and don't forget to subscribe so you don't miss future reviews. If you'd like to help the channel out in other ways, links are in the description to various support methods. And as always, we hope to see you on the next one.